Right. Well, we've got, looks like most people have arrived. So welcome everybody. And thanks to Deborah and Tina for doing the ear age test. I hope that was insightful for you. Let's get started. My name is Andy. I'm co-founder at a company called eargym. And we're running this webinar to raise awareness about the importance of hearing health and how you can look after it. I'm joined today by Lorraine Gailey. We partner in various ways, which we'll talk about later. And Lorraine has been working hearing for much longer than me and is a bigger expert. So over to you, Lorraine. Do introduce yourself.
That's another way of saying, Andy, that I'm much older than you. Thank you for that, having just mentioned aging. And when I say my ear age is more positive than my chronological age, my ear age is 59. So that gives you a slight hint as to what my chronological age might be, which, in case anyone's wondering, 66, by the way. So don't spend time trying to work it out.
Really?
Absolutely, yeah. Good hairdresser.
You do? Yeah, put me in touch.
Yeah, I will do when you need it.
Excellent. So I'll just tell a little bit about my story. I think we'll kick off there. This is a picture of me DJing, and ironically, I had less hair in this photo. It's sort of about nearly 20 years old, this photo, I think. I love DJing. I fell in love with it when I was about 17. I had a sort of semi-professional career. I did get paid a little bit to DJ in some bars and clubs in a few countries in Europe, which was a bit of a roller coaster ride, to be honest. It was a great experience. But then fast forward sort of 15, 20 years, my late 30s, I really started to notice I couldn't hear what people were saying in busy bars and cafes. And that was a really, really strange experience. It was very isolating. You kind of want to leave the environment, but you don't want to leave your friends. I knew something was going on with my hearing, and I started to do lots of research about it. And most people I speak to have a story to tell about their personal hearing or someone in their family and how it's affecting them or the family around them. I think it impacts a lot of people. It's a lot more common than most people sort of give it credit for or realize. And Lorraine, you work with people impacted with hearing loss every day, don't you?
I do indeed, Andy. My history is that I became interested in hearing when I was looking at lip reading, in fact, when I was in my very early 20s as a research topic. I ended up working in a specialist rehabilitation unit in a charity for over 30 years with adults who had had normal hearing at some stage in their life up until at least their mid-teens and then lost it, either totally or partially, a bit like yourself, Andy.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was gradual, sometimes it was very sudden. What it meant for everyone was what you've just described. Feelings of isolation, feelings of not being part of things, disorientation, not being able to join in, not being able to do the things you want. And what I did in the charity and what we excelled at was bringing people together to share their stories, to learn from each other. We weren't audiologists, so there was the audiology fraternity to fit hearing aids when that was appropriate. What we did was we helped people to learn communication strategies that would help them in these situations, the sorts of things that are illustrated on the screen just there. Someone chatting away to you and you really can't follow what they're saying, or sitting there in a training meeting or in any other kind of environment, interesting stuff being said that you want to hear and you need to hear, but you can't because your ears aren't working well. What I did when I retired from that is I set up Hearing Partners to then look at those same problems in people with normal hearing, but who find themselves in those situations because of the noise in the environment. So the noise in an open plan office or in social environments, and you've described that very well, Andy. And the communication tactics and the ear training that can help if you've lost your hearing and can't hear for that reason actually are the same if you want to hear better in noise. So we'll touch on that a bit later.
Yeah, I think it doesn't get talked about much, does it? I think, it's hard to tell if someone around you is suffering with hearing loss. Obviously, there are some obvious signs that they are asking you to repeat yourself and things, but the sort of other bigger impact side of things, it's hard to notice that sometimes. the data shows that I think it's 1 in 5 adults are affected by hearing loss, but I was interested to learn at the conservation event we both attended a couple of weeks ago. They talked about this hidden hearing loss a lot. That seems to be a common sort of theme at the moment in the sector, and that, hearing tests are good at sort of seeing if you've lost frequencies up to about 20,000 hertz, I think it was, but above that, we can't measure, and that, well, it's very hard to measure, but with specialist equipment you can, and that's where younger people tend to start. If we could measure it better, we could sort of start to sort of see that it was affecting people earlier in life. So
and
yeah, there's still a lot we don't know.
The other side of it is that hearing tests tend to test your hearing in quiet.
Yeah.
Whereas actually the hidden hearing loss that we're finding all over the place these days in our particularly noisy world is hearing loss that becomes evident when you're in noise. So you may be able to hear perfectly well in a quiet room or in an audiologist testing booth.
Yeah.
But when that's masked by background noise, there's a much bigger problem out there, and it affects far, far, far more people. And you mentioned that sometimes you can notice other people struggling well. I think that is true. I think it's also true that sometimes we don't notice when we ourselves are struggling well. So actually recognizing that we're having a problem, whether because of the noise in the background or for any other reason, it's not always easy to know what you're, it's logical. It's not always easy to know what you're not hearing because you're not hearing it, and nobody else is turning around to see a noise, but they're just kind of blocking it. You don't know that they can hear something you can't hear. So it's really hard to find out.
Yeah, I've got a 2-year-old daughter, and she hears things before I do, and that's when you notice when someone else goes, oh yeah, I heard that, and you don't hear it. But I think we're going to talk about some of the common signs. We're moving on to the sort of next slide that we've got. My issue, the difficulty in noise, which you touched on as the big one, Lorraine, there's so much more processing the brain's got to do to sort of filter out to the thing you're trying to listen to. That's got a name, hasn't it? The cocktail party effect. It's very common. A lot of people are affected by it. The other one I heard recently I think is interesting. If you feel like everyone's mumbling around you and not talking properly, that's probably you, not them. Which is a sort of earlier one. And I meet a lot of people who say that their partner keeps telling me I need to get my hearing tested. Probably because they're saying pardon a lot or turning the TV up really loud. But yeah, the one that you introduced me to, this idea that hearing loss starts with brain fatigue before maybe you notice anything else. And I think that's a big one that affected me. I always just thought I was working hard, but I think maybe I was just, really working my brain to hear things. So maybe tell us a bit more about that, because that's a really interesting one, I think.
Well, it used to be thought that when we were hearing, and we'll focus for the moment just on hearing speech. We use our hearing for many other things, of course, but for hearing speech is really the main topic for today. We used to think that what happened was your ears received the sounds, they got sent up to your brain worked out what it was, and then you decided what you wanted to say in reply. That is true, that does happen. What we haven't realized until fairly recently, though, is that when the signals get up there, not only does your brain work on those and work out what the meaning was and what you want to say next, but also it sends further signals back down to your ears, which affects the signals your ears then pick up in the next few milliseconds. So there's a massive amount of brain processing going on. Something else we've learned very recently is that our eyes are really, and the whole visual cortex in our brain are also working hard when we're hearing. We don't usually think about that. But when you play sounds to someone's ears and you have a way of measuring the brain activity, the visual centers in your brain light up in the same way that your auditory centers do. So basically your whole brain is working pretty hard. Now, when it's working in optimal circumstances where your hearing is functioning normally, there is no background noise and there's a clear signal, your brain's got plenty of capacity to do that, not a problem. But when you introduce noisy distraction or degrade the signal in some way by reducing the volume or by introducing a hearing loss, then your brain has to work very much harder to compensate for the degraded signal. And it does. And it does that really well. And that's why many people who are beginning to have a hearing loss don't realize it. Your brain does work hard to get over that. As a result, however, you feel knackered at the end of a conversation, and you don't, or you rarely think that's because you're having to work hard to hear. You just think, oh, feeling exhausted today, and you didn't get a good night's sleep, or it's late, or I've done too much today, worked too hard. But actually sometimes it maybe those things as well, but it's also that you're having to work harder to hear. And when you do have to work harder to hear, and you realize that that's happening in certain situations, what's a natural, normal, healthy human thing to do? Avoid those situations, which moves on to the next bit about feeling alone and isolated. People tend to reduce their social life a little bit, maybe not take part in so many work events, avoid the Christmas party season that's coming up. And that leaves you then feeling a little bit out of things.
I thought it was the alcohol that made you tired, but maybe it's not.
Well, sometimes the alcohol means you don't care. There's that to it. So, but I think all of these things tend to impact us more as we become a little older, when we reach our 40s, 50s, and 60s. Everything is then playing against having the same levels of energy and involvement that we had earlier. And the quality of our later life has become so linked, again, recently in research, to our hearing. It's unbelievable. I recently learned, I know we've talked about this briefly, Andy, something I didn't know before, and we didn't know before, which is that if your hearing is beginning to reduce, then you're likely to become less physically active as well. And we all know what happens when that starts. So really good reasons for caring for your hearing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all fascinating stuff. I think there's a really good film. I don't know if anyone's seen The Sound of Metal. It's about a drummer who goes deaf. So this is like the really extreme sort of side of hearing loss. But it's a very powerful, moving film about, how impactful that would be on your life if you really couldn't hear people. And the film really is about, he gets very sudden hearing loss, and it's his journey of trying to, get his hearing back. Basically, he can't quite come to terms with it, and then he comes to terms with it, and it's very powerful. So highly recommend that. I believe it's on Amazon or probably all major streaming services. Before we move on, I meant to say earlier, we're very welcome to answer any questions you guys have got. Please post them in the chat here. We will end with a Q&A at the end as well, if anything comes up. But do post them as we go, and we will address them at a suitable time. So feel free to do that. I think we're going to talk a bit about noise. And you said it, Lorraine, we live in a really, really noisy world. I think that makes general life really challenging. We're literally putting our ears at risk every single day, from making a nutritious breakfast, if you like smoothies like me, but things like enjoying music and traveling, they can be really like loud environments. And of course, I think we all know going to sort of nightclubs and things is exposing our ears to a very loud sound. But maybe people don't know, if you turn your headphones up to maximum, that, even 4 minutes of that can cause permanent damage. So headphones and personal devices are very powerful, and we're using them so much more. Personally, we've basically got a Walkman in our pocket. It's Walkman in my day, or CD player or whatever. And I've got that in our pocket with high quality digital sound, which can go very loud. We're using headphones for work a lot on calls. I use headphones for remote working. So I think, the work environment's an interesting area as well to look at. Not all noisy workplaces are created equally. I think this is what we think of as a noisy workplace: production line, lots of noise and machinery. But actually, this can be a noisy workplace too. Everybody's got headphones on. Everybody's probably turning the volume up to drown out the sound behind them. yeah, if you listen for more than an hour at average volume, that can cause some damage. And if you're doing that every day, that can really add up. So open plan offices, again, there's more need to block out the sort of background sound. So yeah, I think that's really worth bearing in mind. Noise exposure is a real problem for all of us. And
I think, can I just come in, Andy, at that and just say that there's more than one problem in exposing ourselves to levels of noise for too long or at too high a level. And one is the one you've mentioned, which is damaging our hearing. But that aside, it's also causing physical stress. Again, the impact of noise and high levels of constant noise on our systems is becoming recognized now. So the stress and the tension that you hold in your body leads to all sorts of other issues as well. So there's many good reasons for keeping the noise levels down. Yeah,
and that I get that. I've got my standing desk at the moment, because you're sitting in that place in your seat at work and got your headphones on the whole time. Yeah, then you get that tension in the neck and everything. If lots of sounds contributing to that. I've been seeking out moments of solitude recently since learning all of this stuff, and I'm thinking that could be beneficial. But yeah, I think one of the things we're really trying to get across in these webinars is, the stigmatization that this is a problem just for old people. But the fact is that noise exposure is a big problem for everyone, especially younger people, because that's where you can have the impact. And the World Health Organization are really worried about the sort of long-term health as we live longer, and young people. They estimate 50% of people under 35 are listening too loud and putting themselves at risk of avoidable hearing loss. So yeah, I know that my DJing life probably put me at the extreme end of that, and I wish I'd taken more care and shown my ears more respect. And it seems like 20 years on, people they just don't know, do they? So the good news, of course, is that we can protect our ears from noise exposure. That's one proactive way that we can do something. And yeah, we think we've got a little bit of advice here. So yeah, safe listening advice, headphones is a really big one. And the 60-60 rule is a nice one to remember. Don't listen at 60% volume, no more than 60 minutes, and then give your ears a rest. So that's a big one for me. I love music. I just felt like I wanted music on the whole time, but I'm really trying to find these moments of having no sound and giving my ears a bit of a rest. And yeah, noise cancelling headphones are worth investing in if you can afford them, because they do mean that the volume you've got in your headphone can be less. It's because you're blocking out all the background sound. Anything you want to add in here, Lorraine? I can sort of advice on safe listening.
I think the biggest single thing we can do is just become aware of it. Stop from time to time and just think, what's bashing my eardrums right now? Do I need it? Do I want it? Could I do it differently? So waking up to the sound that we have around us, when we're out and about, coffee shops, things like that, the noise in there can be horrendous sometimes. Anytime you think, oh, this is really noisy, then it's probably massively too noisy. Do something.
Yeah.
Ask for a takeaway cup and go somewhere else.
Yeah, and hearing protection is one of those things. There's really good earplugs that you can buy now from as little as sort of 10, 15 pounds. And they block the volume so that you get the same sound quality. So if you're going out and about and going to lots of clubs and things, you can, make sure your ears are getting less of a bashing in that environment, but not lose out on the sound. And of course, if you're using in loud environments for work, then most workplaces provide that. And it's not always easy to remember to put the protection on, but it makes such a big difference. And regular testing, I think we'd say, just keeping an eye on if you can see that things are starting to degrade, you can maybe know that you need to do something about it. So yeah, I think that's probably all on safe listening. Do you have a question? Oh, Tina, yes. Do you have any posters that can be shared so I can print and put up around my work? Probably. We definitely got some leaflets. I could send you some leaflets, but yeah, I will have a good think about that. And talk to our marketing team. We've got lots of marketing material. So yeah, I think moving on, maybe some of you might be thinking, you've got some of the signs of hearing loss we've just mentioned, or you maybe know about it and want to know what the sort of support options are. So good news is there's lots. Your GP can give some advice. There's high street audiologists, hearing coaches and therapists like Lorraine. There's a good range of people and resources. We don't have time to cover all of this today. I'm going to talk a bit about hearing training. That's some of the work we're doing here at eargym. Lorraine is going to talk about communication tactics, and there's lots you could do with technology and equipment. So we might touch on any of that. So anything of this is jumping out as interesting, do feel free to shoot a question and we can do that. And yeah, Lorraine, I think you're going to talk about communication tactics today. Maybe to explain a little bit about what that is, and we'll come back to it.
What that is things that you can do today that will help you the next time you're in a noisy place. And it's things like hints about how you can use your eyes better, where you can stand, where you can sit, how you can modify the environment in simple ways to make it easier today while you work on the longer term training, for example, or getting the equipment that you need. So I'll say a little bit about that later.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, I'm really excited to tell everyone about the work we're doing at eargym. So we are taking this concept of hearing training, which I'd never heard of, but it's a fantastic proactive way of doing something to improve your hearing before you need hearing aids, or if you have hearing aids, it works for both. So yeah, what is hearing training? It involves interactive exercises that are designed ultimately, I guess, to improve your hearing skills, which is your ability to detect and interpret sounds. So yeah, it works by focusing on where most of the hearing takes place, which is actually the brain, which we sort of touched on a little bit today. So yeah, we see it as two sides to hearing: your ears, which detect sound and send signals to the brain. You could sort of describe that as the hardware of your system. But then your brain does a lot of work sort of analyzing those signals and making sense of them. And as Lorraine touched on, maybe sending signals back to the ear, and maybe the ear changes based on what the environment's sending you. So yeah, what training does is stimulate the brain to get better at processing sound. So just like you go to the gym and train a muscle, you can train your brain to adapt to the fact that you've got hearing loss and become stronger at processing sound, or just generally get better at processing lots of different sounds and understanding what people around you are saying. So hearing aids are brilliant. They make things louder. They're about volume, whereas training makes things clearer. They help you understand and process what you're hearing. And that's what we're doing at eargym. And, we've taken the scientific research in this area, which shows significant potential, and we've turned the kind of ideas and mechanics of that into fun games that are fun but challenging to play on your mobile phone. And they really challenge your kind of key hearing skills and simulate how you hear in the real world. And we're starting to see some great results. So the majority of our users that train 3 times a week see an average 14% improvement in their ability to understand what people are saying in noisy environments. And we think we can push that further. And a lot of people say they notice like improvement at locating sound as well as paying attention, which is a key hearing skill. So yeah, that's hearing training, and definitely can give more information to anyone who's interested in that. But yeah, over to you, Lorraine. How about tactics?
Well, I've mentioned eyes a few times before, and I'm going to mention again the thing that really hit me strongest when I was only starting out in this field, that told me more than anything else has ever done since about how important it is to look at the person you want to hear. It's the single most important thing that you can do when you've attended to training your hearing, to watch the other person, because we all lip read, whether we know it or not, whether we're conscious of it or not. And even little babies do that. Infants around 3 months old, if you show them a video of their mother talking and you play the sound out of sync with that, they get really distressed. They obviously don't know what the words are at that stage, but they know that what they see should match what they're hearing.
Right.
We come with that hardwired into us, and we never usually have to consciously rely on it. But if we start to pay attention to it more, You don't, I mean, there are excellent lip reading classes and online lip reading resources, and those I can strongly recommend. But if you don't want to go to those lengths, just start watching people much more carefully, and that will really help, especially if it's noisy. The other way that we know that we are all watching and listening and expecting the two to match, and we know what it should sound like if we hear it, and likewise if we see something we know what we probably missed hearing, is when the soundtrack's out of sync with the film on the in the cinema or in when we're streaming. It's incredibly frustrating, and even very short out of sync gaps.
It's like, yeah, subtitles and overdubbing foreign films are quite hard to follow, aren't they?
Oh, they are. Overdubbing is worse than nothing at all, because you're seeing something and you're hearing something and they're not matching, and it's very, very hard to work out. So that's an example of one of the things that we look at in our hearing partners training. We look at, you know, some more specific hints and tips, what to look for, what you can particularly make out, and you can't lip read everything. By the way, don't believe these stories in spies that you can lip read someone across the room and tell exactly what they've said, even if they're royalty. No, you can't. You just can't. You can be probabilistic about it, but you can't be certain about it.
Yeah.
There are other things, though, that you can do. And you're looking at the surroundings. In any given room, there will be some parts of that room that will allow you to hear better than others. And understanding how and why that is, that places with hard surfaces where the sound will bounce off will be difficult. So kitchens are terrible places to have a conversation in. Restaurants where they've got tiled floors and hard tabletops, and they've got the cooking going on in the middle of the restaurant. Those hard, shiny surfaces will make it really difficult. So if you've got a choice of venue and you know that, then you can make better choices that will allow everyone to have an easier conversation. So that's one example of the surroundings, because the eyes matter so much, getting the lighting right, of course.
Yeah, there's a good app, isn't there, called Mumbly, and they're tracking noise levels in venues, and that you can find a quiet place that's good for a quiet conversation. I think that's a genius idea. That's
right. They're building an app where in real time you can say, here's where I happen to be at the moment, and I don't want to go more than half an hour from where I am. So where's a quiet place locally? Excellent stuff. And that moves us into technology, really. There are many pieces of technology, and you've mentioned earbuds. Some of those come with built-in speech focus functions. Virtually nobody knows about that. You don't pay more for it. It's already in there in the earbud. AirPods Pro are particularly good at that. And again, the hearing partners training will just share a little bit more about that sort of information. We don't have time to go into detail here, but there are many things that you can do to allow you to hear more easily and more enjoyably right here and now.
Yeah, thanks, Lorraine. I've just noticed the time. We're just coming up to time. Unfortunately, I guess we need to wrap up. Feels like we could go on. I guess we got time for one question probably, and I'm hoping to persuade Lorraine to do a special in January. We might do a sort of Q&A session in early January when people are very health focused. So yeah, there's definitely more webinars coming. So yeah, feel free to send questions through and we can cover them. But if anyone has got any specific questions now, we could probably take one or two quick ones. This is us. Our emails are here. Do feel free to get in touch if you've got any questions about today. But yeah, we will get finished in the next minute. So thank you for everybody for staying on. So yeah, I guess just a little bit, this is Lorraine and I's details. So eargym and hearing partners partner up to deliver our eargym's employee benefit packages and services, which includes access to our app and the webinars, but also hearing coaching through Lorraine and audiologist advice and on-site hearing testing as well. So yeah, if you work at a company that might be interested in any of those, do drop me a line and I can send some more information and forward on.
Including some information, some very scary information about the cost, the economic cost to the economy of not managing hearing better in the workplace.
Yeah.
There is a bottom line impact here.
Yeah, that's a good point. We've just done some more work on that actually. So yeah, thanks, Lorraine. And yeah, before you go, it'd be great to get some feedback from everybody. If you tick the little box, say give feedback, it'll let you write a few lines to let us know what you enjoyed, if we can cover something else, what we could do better. Give us a score out of 10. That would be really, really useful feedback. And finally, yeah, lots of ways to stay in touch with us here at eargym. You can follow us on social media, and please help us raise awareness, share our content. We've got a lot of good advice. There's free resources out there. And if you want to try our app, you can get a free trial, use this QR code, and also get a 30% discount. And feel free to take a photo of that and share it around. Our website's trainyourhearing.com. I'll go off camera now and leave this up for a couple of minutes, but yeah, I think we'll wrap up there. So thank you everyone for listening, and yeah, do stay in touch and let us know if we can help with anything.
Okay. Bye, Andy, and thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Lorraine. Thanks very much. Take care. Bye-bye.